My guest today is Jonathan Rivers. And I first met Jonathan when he was a ninth grader, I think, at Shaw High School, a little more than 20 years ago. John, you believe that?
I don't believe it.
And his nickname, I remember, would tickle me to death every time I heard it. It was Bam. And I think he got that from Coach Flowers because he said Bam was a sound that Jonathan created when he hit opposing players. And I always thought that was a pretty good name for a football player. He was also a team leader and an excellent role model and student. And welcome, Jonathan, and thanks for being here today.
Oh, appreciate you having me, Dr. Arnold, and thank you for what you're doing for the show. And a funny story. I'm glad you brought up my nickname, if I may, right quick, because a lot of people think I got that from football, and actually, their nickname came from baseball when I was, I want to say, 13 years old.
Oh,
I had
yeah.
I had a coach named Coach Swan who coached me in junior leagues right before I got to high school, and we were at practice one day, and we were taking BP, and I hit like 6 or 7 line drives in a row, and then every time I hit a line drive, he would just yell "Bam, Bam," and then he said, "That's your name, Bam Bam." And literally from there, it has stuck to my nickname to what 95% of the people that I've ever met or know in my life call me. The only people that don't call me Bam are probably my wife, my mother, and my children. And it's also the name of my business, Believe and Motivate. So it's had reverberating effects ever since he gave that to me. So, but I love that you said it because a lot of people think it came from football, but it actually came from baseball.
Well, that's great. That's great. I didn't know you played baseball, John.
Yes, sir.
Well, now where are you originally from?
Well, originally I was born in Lancaster, Ohio, right? And then moved to Germany when I was 2 years old because my mother was in the military, raised me as a single mother. But I was raised in Columbus, Georgia. I got to Columbus when I was about, I want to say 6, 7 years old and ended up there throughout the duration of elementary, middle school, and high school, of course, and then went on to college. So I'm from Columbus in terms of being raised, born in Lancaster, and then went to Germany, and then have been raising my family in Columbus, Georgia. When I got back around 2006 or seven.
Excellent. Excellent. Now, what uh, what besides football did you do in high school?
Well, in addition to football, I played baseball and also was a part of DECA, Mu Alpha Theta National Honor Society, French Honor Society, a lot of different clubs. The greatest thing about I think my experience at Shaw was that I was exposed to a lot of different opportunities by a lot of different people. And I never forget one thing that Coach Alton Pitts, he was my freshman English teacher and our D-line coach and the wrestling coach at Shaw. I walked into the room one day after having a game that he was really excited about during our freshman year. And he said, "Mr. Rivers," he said, you're a great student. You make all A's. He said that you are a phenomenal athlete. He said, "You're a Renaissance man." And he says that, you're versed in a lot of different areas. And that has always stuck with me, Dr. Arnold. It's so much that I started a camp called Camp Renaissance where I train athletes, but not only train them physically to help their strength, to help their speed, to help their overall power and development as an athlete, but also help them from the inside out, to teach them how to be a young man of character, a young man in Christ, a young man who can be dependent upon, not just on the field, but in the classroom, at the house with his mom or his dad and sister, brother, what have you, in the community. So many things that have happened to me as a youth have stuck with me my entire life. And that's just the impact that certain people have had on me.
Now, that's a great story. I've always thought that Alton Pitts was sort of a Renaissance man himself.
Absolutely
Uh,
was.
any English teacher that coached football and wrestling and painted his own classroom
His own classroom, no doubt.
for with scenes from different literary works. I always thought that was pretty amazing. And I like the fact that you were guiding young people. Um, I heard a coach one time tell his team and that 99% of the college coaches that came to recruit didn't want to know what kind of athlete you were. They wanted to know what kind of teammate you were.
Right.
And what you did in your classes, what you did off the field, and were you a leader or were you a follower? And I always thought, I wish every young man or young woman who played sports in high school could hear that story and note that people at the next level already figure you're a good athlete. But if you're not a good person, then you're wasting your time and theirs. So that's a
Absolutely.
great story. I like that. So you've always had a positive attitude and a willingness to do whatever it took to compete or to complete a goal that you've set for yourself. And I don't think that mindset develops all by itself or in a vacuum. Uh, who do you give credit to for developing that attitude in Jonathan Rivers?
Yeah, well, anything I do, all the glory first has to go to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, just for growing me and developing me still, because I'm nowhere near a finished product. But I think when you're talking about the people in my life, my mother, of course, who, like I said, was a single mom, was in the military, did a phenomenal job, in my opinion, raising me, and that's a shout out to her, and also a boost for myself. But teachers and coaches that I've had, I've truly been blessed, and I'll say this before I even go into detail, Dr. Arnold. I promise you, I feel like today there are so many coaches and teachers that may not feel encouraged, and because of that, or may not have the knowledge to do what I was exposed to, meaning I had so many great teachers and great coaches. And because I know what greatness looks like in those teachers and coaches, I can see where there's a deficiency, right? I can see where there's lack. And just to speak about, talked about, Coach Pitts, and, you and Dr. Overton, being the principal, Dr. Overton was, and you the assistant principal when I was at Shaw. And, you, of course, and your wife knowing my mother didn't help me at all, but it helped me all the time. And I'll tell you a quick story, because whether it was Coach Raymond Hall and Esther Pearson at Sally Little League, Coach David Atkins, rest in peace, who's no longer with us, who coached me at Richards Middle School with Coach Russell Scott, Bo Oates, Marvin Crumbs, who was the former principal at Columbus. Like I said, I had a litany and a group of people that really helped me. Miss Snell in the 5th grade, who always put my feet to the fire to make sure that I knew how great I was academically. But I'll tell you a quick story. It's funny, we talked about Coach Pitts. I don't know if you remember, I think her name was Miss Terry. She co-taught English, freshman English, with Coach Pitts. And she told me one time, she said, Jonathan, in our English class, she said, hey, she asked somebody a question, and she said, Jonathan, what's the answer? And I said, I don't know. So instead of her moving on to somebody else, Dr. Arnold, she sat there and said, I don't believe that. Because in that moment, I had an attitude about something, right? I was having a pity party on myself. And she said, I don't believe that. And then, man, let me tell you what she did. So she asked she literally took a poll and said, everybody raise your hand who believes Jonathan knows the answer to this question. And when I tell you literally everybody raised their hand, I looked at everybody, I was like, y'all sold me out right here, man. But the thing about it was I did know the answer. And I didn't answer because I had an attitude. And what she showed me in that moment and talked to me about after class, you are impactful. So the fact that you didn't want to answer means that you left an opportunity on the table to help somebody else who may not have known the answer. You see what kind of impact you have, what kind of leader you are, because everybody knew you knew the answer, and so did I. So for me to let you just not answer because you had an attitude wasn't my job. And I'm telling you that story because I remember it 30 years later. That happened to me when I was 14 years old and I was a freshman. So those are the type of impacts that I've had on my life. And that's just to try to impact I try to be to my own children and everybody else's child that I come in contact with.
That's great. I know who you're talking about. That's Stephanie Fuerte.
Miss Fuerte now,
Yeah.
right. Miss Fuerte now, exactly,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But
And,
and to this day, every time she sees me, she gives me a big hug, and I tell her I never forgot that, man. And I just want people to have those, not just children but adults too, right? Because we also have to be encouraged. I just want them to have that moment of appreciate you for setting me straight and showing me love. Because in that moment, the love she showed was corrected, and that's what we have to know. So being corrected means somebody loves you. When somebody doesn't love you, they'll be far less inclined to correct you. And I hope that people understand that.
now, Jonathan, how long have you been in broadcasting?
So I've probably been doing broadcasting for over 10 years. The funny thing about it, Dr. Arnold, is there were so many times that I did it for little or no money. And the thing about it was, there's a guy named Josh Pate, who's one of the biggest college football analysts now. we used to do a radio show together and we used to do television together. And he used to tell me, hey, you look at sports differently than I do. And the point of me saying that was, well, we were both cutting our teeth and he was doing it from, high school on. He went to school for it and what have you. I went to school for marketing and business, which I love. And I get to run my own business now. But I did it because I love the sport of football. I love sports in general. I speak it at a very high level in my estimation, and I can allow people to understand it. So there were times where we were doing shows and there was nothing coming in, but I was gaining that experience. There's a book called The Outlier by Malcolm Gladwell, and it talks about 10,000 hours to become an expert in something. And what I've realized over the years is that I've been gaining that ability to become an expert because I'm putting in the work. So it's been over a decade, and now I have my own television show called Move the Chains that comes on Fox every Saturday at 9:30, and it comes on YouTube. And I've got a great team around me in terms of my producers and directors and people that take care of the social media and YouTube. So it's truly a blessing. So over a decade minimum, but my whole life I've been about sports. So
It doesn't happen overnight, does it?
no, it's funny that you said that because a lot of times we want it to. Like we
Oh yeah.
know what's happening and we know what's going to happen. But I think that the one thing that gives me comfort is that I sit back and I look at how long I've been doing it and where I was. And I say, praise God, because now I'm so further more along than I was. And I think that's the progress. Like when you look at the process and you understand, hey, you're not in the same position you were a day ago, 10 days ago, a year ago, 10 years ago. That in itself is encouraging if we allow it to be. So it doesn't happen overnight. But when people see you who never knew you before, in their mind, it happened overnight, but they just don't know the work that you put in
That's
when nobody
right.
was watching.
Yeah, and it's hard sometimes for people to look back at where they started and how far they've come rather than just focus on how far they think they've got to go.
Right.
So I think that's a great point. Now, you went to Auburn after high school, right?
I did. I did.
And you studied what?
I studied marketing. I got my bachelor's in marketing and then ended up getting my MBA from the University of Phoenix. So
Oh,
business major all
wonderful.
the way.
That's great. Now, how was your experience at Auburn?
I loved Auburn and I loved it for a multitude of reasons. One, I became a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, which allowed me to just grow as a young man in that area, in that brotherhood. But also, it's funny because I graduated from Shaw with a 3.8 or 3.9 GPA. I was in the top 10% of the top, I think 1 or 2% of the class and top 10 in terms of GPA. And I got to Auburn in my freshman year, I was on academic probation. And it was because I was partying. It was because of ball or anything like that. It was because in my mind, I said, man, I'm a phenomenal student. I killed it in high school. I can take those same objectives, that same mindset from high school and just apply it to college, and it'll be a breeze. And then I found out it wasn't. Like I found out I needed to study more. I found out I needed to put in the time. I found out I needed to communicate more with professors and allow them to understand who I am and ask for help when I needed it. So it was a wake up call. Betty Russell, aka my mom, she looked at me and she said, "Try me again." And I was like, "I won't." You know what I'm saying? So and it wasn't that I didn't want to do well. It's that I had a misconceived notion about the jump, right? We
Yeah,
always talk
yeah.
about the jump for athletes between high school and college or between college and a professional level. It's the same thing if you want to go to the next level of life, when you go to college, when you go to the military, whether you go on to start your own business, whether you go to technical school, whatever it is, the next stage in your life is a jump and you have to jump with it from a mindset standpoint, from a work ethic standpoint. So, but I loved Auburn, man. It was a great experience. Graduated from Auburn in '04 and just love the experience and the people that I met there.
That's a great story. I remember my first semester. Um, I didn't go to Auburn, but I had some of the same issues that you talked about, and I got some parental encouragement at the end of my first semester. you know, you you can go if you want to pay for it, but don't
Right.
expect us to pay for it if you're not going to pass these classes.
Exactly.
Yeah, but well, now your mom was a major influence in your life, and I've known your mom for a long time,
Yep.
and she set some pretty high expectations for you, didn't she?
And I think not only did she, It was rightfully so, right? So the one thing that I tell all four of my children, the oldest is just graduated from high school and will be playing collegiate football at Reinhardt on scholarship, and my youngest is going to be a fourth grader at Brick David, and our daughter, who's 12, is at Raymond McCullers, and our freshman is going to Brookstone on scholarship, right? The one thing I tell them every day since they've been born is that you're destined for greatness. And I feel like that comes from the way that my mom raised me and the no nonsense attitude she have and love that she had for me. And I think it was, I don't want to sit here and be like, well, she did her best, as if her best wasn't good enough. Like, her best was more than good enough, because she's taken that and used it to love on my wife and love my children, and especially spoil the grandkids. And our family and I have a joke. We're like, man, how does grandma love her daughter-in-law more than her son, right? Because she spoils my wife too. So we have that joke running with the family. But no, she was a very, very huge influence. She was in the military, and the way that I was disciplined, I preached discipline. And I preach discipline to everybody I come in contact with. And people always ask me, well, you must have been in the military. I said, no, I wasn't in the military, but I understand what it means to be disciplined, what it means to do what you're supposed to do and not do what you're not supposed to do. And in the midst, fall, mess up, do the wrong thing, but then do your best to become accountable for those things and move forward. So there was never a time, as great as an athlete that I was, Dr. Arnold, you know this, I was blessed to receive a lot of accolades athletically, whether it was a Gatorade Player of the Year or All-State in football, and freshman awards and JV awards when I was a freshman on varsity and baseball and all that type of stuff. I was just as excited to get all A's in high school. I was just as excited to be in those NHS and the French Honor Society and the Mu Alpha Theta and the Who's Who. I was just as excited for those accomplishments as I was for my athletic accomplishments. And that was because of my mom. She said, you always have to put yourself in position to think. Just think. She used to always tell me, be smarter than insert situation. And that's something that I just kind of, it resonates with me. And I think she's done a phenomenal job. And she, to this day, she's still doing a phenomenal job helping me, supporting me, and loving me. So, I greatly appreciate her.
That's great. I hope she has the same attitude with her grandchildren
Oh, absolutely.
that
I
my
tell my
wife
kids
and
all
I
the time, they're
have.
like, Dad, you too hard on this. I was like, no, I'm not too hard on you. And then when we go to my mom's house, she says stuff to me. I was like, where do you think I get it from, guys? Like, this is who raised me. So, it's funny, 3 generations, and it's just consistent opportunity. And that's what I want. I just want generational opportunity and wealth for my children in a multitude of ways.
Wonderful. And what position does your oldest son, play?
So he plays slot and running back, and also is a returner on special teams. He was all region and all by city his junior and senior years at Northside. Was one of the best players in the state in 5A, and is blessed with an opportunity. He actually leaves on the 4th. He turns 18 Friday, and then he leaves for campus on Monday. So it's an exciting time.
Oh man, yeah, especially for him, it's kind of a nervous time for mom and dad, though, isn't
Oh, for me, no. For his
it?
mom, yeah, 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 and for my wife, yeah. But for me, I'm polishing up the boot and getting ready to extend that knee and kick him on out. But I say that with love, but I just want him to, he knows he always has a support group. But I told him, I said, hey, there's no coming back. I said, you're going here because you wanted to play ball. Like, this is your goal. So you have 2 jobs: to take care of your grades, make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do every day in class, and play football at the highest level that you can. And then now use those as continues to build, as continue and use those as opportunities to build more opportunities. So that's what you chose. This is what you're going to do. So it's kind of where we are.
That's great. My mom gave me one thing when I headed off to school, besides um, helping pay for tuition and all that stuff. She gave me an alarm clock. And I thought, what do you think I'm going to do with that? And she said, this is to make sure your sorry butt gets up every morning and
It's
goes
up
to
every morning.
class.
Absolutely. Because nobody's going to wake you up. You're going to have to do it yourself.
That's right. And um, a coach that we both know used to say that, when you get to college, there's a party every night. And what you have to decide is whether you're going to be there or you're going to be at the library studying.
Right.
And that makes a difference in whether a lot of kids make it through or come back home and have to try
Absolutely.
something else. Now, what what are you going to be when you grow up, Jonathan?
It's funny because I really want to be better, and I know that sounds crazy, because like I told you, I'm going to be a national television host because that is the goal. I feel like God has purposed me to use that. But my biggest, I guess, goal and what I want to be is just an opportunity for people to see Christ. And what I mean by that is I don't care if I'm coaching my baseball or football teams at the youth level. I don't care if I'm talking to my wife or my children, or if I'm on television, I'm talking to somebody about, financial awareness or growing their opportunities for their family, or if I'm helping a business build its brand. That is my gift. God has purposed me to encourage people, to, lead people, and to give those opportunities to them through whether giving my heart, giving my ears. So that's kind of where I want to be. I'm such a big proponent, Dr. Arnold, of purpose and free will. And I think free will is one of the greatest gifts outside of salvation through the blood of Jesus that God has given us. And I'm like, whatever you want to do. And like I said, I'm somebody who graduated from college twice, right? And I tell people all the time, because you said this too, what your parents said, I'm not going to pay if you don't want to go. I want to encourage people to do and live their purpose. If that involves them going to college and succeeding in that arena, do it. If that involves them, like I said earlier, going into the military or starting a business or whatever it is, do it. I think I want to make sure that people don't feel as if they're pigeonholed in their purpose. Their purpose has already been ordained since before they were born, but we don't know what it is until we know what it is. And we just have to be prayerful about that. So that's what I want to be. I want to be a purposed and a purposeful encourager, minister, and not necessarily ordained. Because anything you do that involves your purpose is your ministry. Like this you're doing right here, interviewing myself and all the other 70 people that you've interviewed for this phenomenal opportunity that you created for yourself. This is your ministry. So that's what I want to be. I want to be a minister of my purpose and help other people find theirs.
Wonderful outlook. How many times a year do you speak, John?
Well, honestly, every day of my life. So I'd say typically I'm paid to speak maybe 3 or 4 times a year. And
Uh,
I'm not, so at this point, I don't actively seek that. Not saying that I won't do it, of course, because I was just reached out to by like Kaiser Warren, who wanted me to come and speak to their employees, and have talked to Columbus Waterworks because I've spoken to them before as well. So I'll do it when asked.
yeah.
So in terms of the, contractual, do it maybe 2, 3, 4 times a year. But in terms of being asked to speak at opening days, being asked to come and speak to kids, or being asked to come and speak somewhere, it's just what I do. Right? Speakers speak the same way teachers teach. Right? That's just what it is. So it's something I do on the regular, and I do it purposely. Like I don't think this was by accident. This is giving me an opportunity to elocute. This is giving me an opportunity to speak to you and speak to the audience that you've developed about whatever it is that they need to hear. And I think that's the blessing part about it, is that as long as you do what your purpose to do, it's going to help somebody. And while helping somebody, it's going to continue to develop you.
So you're just teaching without a classroom is what you're doing.
Exactly. And honestly, Dr. Arnold, I love that more, man. Like I really do. Like I'm the type of guy, for whatever reason, I've never been, and I listen, this is somebody who worked since he was 16 years old. First job was at Walmart when I was a junior at Shaw. So football season was in, I worked on the weekends, and when football season was over with and I wasn't playing baseball, I was working. So I've been working a long time, and I've come to the realization over the past decade, 15 years, like I love the grind, but the grind is the open sky for me, or
Yeah.
doing it on my own, or creating opportunities to where I can multiply my time by partnering and leveraging other people's talents, not because it's being taken advantage of, but because leveraging people is simply allowing their purpose to benefit you and them as a partnership. So I don't have to necessarily be everywhere in order to accomplish something. So that's kind of where, like you said, my classroom is now anywhere. And I think it's the most comfortable place I've ever been.
And that's pretty evident just talking to you. You're pretty sure of who you are and what you believe and who you believe in. And I like that a lot. It's nice to see confidence in a young man, especially when he knows the direction he's going.
And I appreciate you saying that, right? Because scripture tells us to cast not away our confidence, for it has great reward. And I say this as somebody with plenty of insecurities, right? I say it with somebody who has plenty of, baggage and plenty of mess. that I have, and I love that because even in that mess, even in those insecurities, even in those times to where I do say, well, man, am I really this or da da da? You know, God is always putting you in position to hear something from somebody or see something somewhere that reminds you of who He is and who you are and to whom you belong. So I think that's the most important thing because the confidence, and I think a lot of times, Dr. Arnold, what happens is some people who are confident, they get labeled as arrogant or they get labeled as thinking they're better than somebody. Now, I do think there are some people that feel that way. That's just the truth of the matter.
Oh, sure.
But confidence is something to where you know that you're phenomenal, but you know that your phenomenal nature is not of you, right? It comes from God, and you know that you can still learn, it can still grow. To me, that's confidence. Arrogance is when you think you're great, absent of the desire or the knowledge that you can get better, or thinking that it's all you. That to me, that's the difference. But the reason we can't cast it away, it has great reward, and the great thing about the reward coming from confidence, it's not just a reward for us, it's a reward for other people. And that's kind of what we're here for, to allow our gifts to shine, allow our light to shine, and benefit as many people as possible. Because you never know whom you'll come in contact with, that you simply being a light in that moment, it may be a 5-second moment, can literally save somebody's life because you don't know where they were headspace wise, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, before you may have said something to remind them, because you might have been their God moment in that moment. You might have been what the Holy Spirit used to keep them encouraged and to keep them moving on. So we have to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves in mental state and in physical state, financial state, emotional state, spiritual state, so we can be there for other people.
You just pretty much defined the goal of every parent, didn't
I hope so. I mean, I
you?
hope I did, man. You know, I just, as a parent, you know, there's so much that my wife and I look at it that can scare you, right? About life and things you went through and things you don't want to keep your children, or things you want to keep your children from. And great thing about life is you can't keep it from everything. And that's how they grow, right? You know, no weapon formed against us shall prosper. Never say no weapon will form. It said it won't prosper. So be ready for things to happen in your life that are not going to be um, in your mind good to you. You're not going to feel good, but they can be advantageous. They can be beneficial. They can be a life-changing event that you thought would break you, but it ended up helping make you the person that you were called to be. So it's all how we approach it day by day and how we look at it perspective-wise.
You know, you're right about that. It's one of those things where I often find myself asking, "Why me, Lord?" And then a few days later, I see the answer. And, oh, okay, I got you now. Now
Yeah.
I understand. Uh, yeah, but it's nice to see that you have carried that attitude, that positive attitude, over into not just what you do, but who you are. I like to see that a lot. I really do. Now, I need you to tell me what you think young people can do, just in general, to follow the same path or a similar path as far as mindset goes that you have.
Uh, Honestly, I think it's first just be willing to listen. I love to speak, Dr. Arnold, but the one thing that I really want to make sure that I can provide for people is the heart to listen. And because, you know, listening to somebody and hearing them are two different things. And that's why I truly, like, even though I listen, I want to hear them, because I can hear somebody, right? And it's the noise is random, but I hear it going on. I can't quite decipher what it is, you know what I'm saying? But I can hear it, so I know it's happening. But if I actually listen, there's an intent there to understand, there's an intent there to comprehend, right? So just listening. And honestly, I think the younger generation now, and I know a lot of people talk about that, they're more in tune with listening than I would say mine was. They're just listening to different things. Like they're listening to different avenues and they're deciding where to put their eggs, or they're deciding how to move in their life. And I would just say, always be willing to listen and learn from somebody else. You know, there was this kid who I think is about to be a senior in high school. His name's Chance Mackey, and he's a great young man. I love his mom Kim and his sister Ivy. He played ball with my oldest son, so he's about to graduate high school, I think, in 2026. He was 5 years old, and I was coaching the football team, and I was saying things, and you know how animated and excited I am, and I was just do. He looked at me, he tugged on my shirt, he said, Coach, he said, why do you say things that 5-year-olds don't understand? And I sat there and I stopped. And I said, wow. So I said, hey, that's a teachable moment for me coming from a 5-year-old. So I just think just allow teachable moments in your life. And that's what it is. Teachable moments can come from any source, anytime, any opportunity. So man, I'm telling you, there to me, there are so many young phenoms and phenomenal people that are going on today. Like, look at YouTube, man. Look at TikTok. It's funny because Dr. Arnold, like when you were teaching and being a principal, right? And I was growing up as a student, there was always a career day or something where people say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you heard the same things because mindset-wise, those were the things that we were exposed to. Nowadays, you'll hear social media influence, you'll hear TikToker, you'll hear YouTuber, you'll hear game enthusiast, and they do those things because it's what they love, and yet it still provides for them and their family. So that's what I love. I love the fact that time and opportunity have created so many more avenues for people to grow in. And I think that's what I want young people to understand is like, don't think that there's an opportunity that you have to be involved in because it's the available opportunity. The opportunity for you may be one that doesn't even exist yet. It may not exist until you're the one that breaks through on it. So I think just limitless opportunities, man. We serve a limitless God. So I don't want to limit what we can do here if we really trust in who he is.
John, that's a great message, and it's worth repeating to as many people as you can possibly repeat it to. Well, listen, I appreciate you being with me today. It has been a learning experience for me, and I hope for you too.
Absolutely. And the only thing I want to say before we leave, Dr. Arnold, is when you saw me at Publix a few days ago, you said, John, I want to have you on my podcast. And I'm going to tell you the one reason why you said it. I know there are a lot of different things that people say. The one reason you said it was because in my life, the time you knew me, I left an impact and didn't burn. And the impact was not a bridge burning one. And that's what I just want to tell people. Don't burn bridges. I'm not saying you have to agree with everybody because you won't. I'm not saying you have to be friends with everybody because you won't necessarily be friends, but I want you to love them with the love of Christ. But when you operate in a world where you are very, very diligent and not burning bridges and keeping those relationships, there will be opportunities for you years later. And I'm a firm believer that if I would have left and burned a bridge and been that student who you said, man, this kid always is in trouble. I've seen what he's done in his life and he's not really trying to better his thing. You wouldn't have offered or extended this invitation. So I'm blessed and thankful that you did. And I'm thankful that no bridge was burned in that opportunity.
Well, I think you built more than you burned, buddy.